I'm Coach Caric. I'm a senior mental health practitioner and sports mental performance coach from Manchester, England. Thanks to Kenny and Lisa for this opportunity to reach out to so many of you. We're going to go through the performance psychology of cheer, hopefully some helpful tips for you. So I'm going to move my big head out of the way now so you can see the presentation and I will talk you through it. Gary Neville, footballer who played for Manchester United in England, said for sportsmen or women who want to be champions, the mind can be just as important, if not more important, than any other part of the body. What we find is that training is 90% physical and 10% mental. When we get to competition, that kind of flips on its head and becomes 10% physical and 90% mental. Being strong mentally we have to see as a skill. It's huge. Talk about the technical things, but definitely your attitude and mental toughness are a huge factor. That goes for most sports. So mental toughness is basically the ability to outperform opponents by managing the demands, showing consistency, drive, focus, confidence and control under pressure. It can be considered a collection of mental skills such as attitude, belief, commitment, determination, dedication and discipline. And to do this we use self-talk, imagery and what we call arousal control. Three things to remember with mental toughness. Persist. No matter what's happening, despite the pressure of competition or adversity or any injuries, any missed opportunities and mistakes, persist. Resist. Don't give in to fear and doubt and anxiety. Don't think negatively and don't worry. And assist. Push the limits of your training. Always learn. We're capable of learning so much. So learn new technical skills, manage your emotions, prepare fully for competition and maintain that positive perspective. Mental toughness, we grow that by challenging ourselves instead of backing down from things. We have to see them as mental tests. To pass the test in sport, you've got to prepare and focus on your strengths and plan for the competition ahead. Remind yourself of your strengths and talents. Tell yourself that you're an athlete with the right skills, or at least the means to develop them. In 2003, England won the Rugby World Cup, and the head coach, Sir Clive Woodward, said winning that World Cup was not about doing one thing 100% better. It's about doing 100 things 1% better. And this is what we call an aggregation of marginal gains. Identify every aspect of your training. Go through sleep, diet, conditioning, strength, stamina, balance, technique. This is not an exhaustive list, but the more you can get, the better. And aim to improve each one of those by 1% each week. 1% across all those different areas creates an aggregate gain for the whole performance. If you select 20 different things you're going to improve by 1%, you've created a 20% improvement. Psychologically, 1% is a lot more achievable than setting an unrealistic gain of 100%. Pep Guardiola, the head coach for Manchester City, said you play at the rhythm you train at. If you train badly, you play badly. If you work like a beast in training, you play the same way. This is where the discipline comes in for peak performance training. Peak performance training is basically training in competition conditions. When people are asked to do full outs, it creates familiarity and peak performance muscle memory. Peak performance creates constant improvement in strength, speed, technique and your cardiovascular capacity. So what stops us from peak performance training? It's basically the chimp paradox. The chimp paradox is where the primitive brain takes control whenever we perceive a risk or danger. Now, when a coach says full out, your brain will naturally protect you by holding back to 80%. Consciously, we're going to hold back a further 20% because when a coach says full out, you know there's another full out coming after the first full out. So we're going to hold a little bit back in reserve. If we do that, we're training to 60% of our capacity and our capability. That means we're going to develop a muscle memory of 60%. Now when you get to competition and the enormity of the event and the performance kicks in, you're going to perform at 90%. That adrenaline will take you up to 90%. We're only used to 60%, so that gives us a 30% deficiency and difference. That's where mistakes happen, that's where timing issues can happen. We have to look at outcome focus. Outcome focus is where we have no limits. The broader your imagination, the more possible the outcomes. Action in competition is so fast that you can't afford to make predictions or overthink for what might happen. Conversely, focusing on outcomes revolves around a series of what ifs. What if I make a bad grip? What if I don't stay up? What if I stumble or tumble? We start to worry about things that might not even happen. Focusing on outcomes creates that fear and anxiety and apprehension, and it allows the chimp part of the brain, that primitive part, to take over. Focusing on outcomes slows your performance on the mat because you're overthinking and trying to consider every eventuality. Now, a lot of athletes think sport's about winning, and that's a concept that's based on future outcomes. If winning's the goal, why should I think about anything else? So we root ourselves in that outcome focus. What we need to do is process focus. Think of process in terms of practice, building skills and developing the performance, not under pressure. You're not trying to win in practice, you're focusing on what you're doing in that exact moment. So we're back to 90% physical and 10% mental. Focusing on what you can do in the moment gives you the best chance to hit your peak. To be at your best, you do what you can in the moment. Focus on the process and allow the results to take care of themselves. Visualization. When Novak Djokovic won Wimbledon for the 5th time, he basically said, I'm always trying to imagine myself as a winner. Stress the importance of that mental and emotional strength. Now, when we visualise, we're using an internal stimulus to override an external stimulus. An external stimulus would be like going into warm-up and watching another team hit everything perfectly and smash out some fantastic tumbles. It's uncontrolled. We have no control over what we're watching, so we react to it. And that can create an undesired state. Sometimes it can create a desired state. It can spur you on to try and be as good. However, visualization is an internal stimulus and we've got full control over it. We can deploy it and use it when necessary, and that creates a desired state for performing. The research shows the more realistic you're able to make your visualization, the more it works. So don't just think what it looks like, think what it sounds like, think what it feels like. Make it a multi-sensory experience. When you visualize, similar areas in the brain are active, which evolved in the actual motor skills and movement. If you're visualizing tumbling, the areas of the brain associated with proprioception and spatial awareness and movement become more active. It primes your brain. Visualization is like an extra practice. Whatever you've done in practice that day, go home, visualize it. Visualize the perfect routine. That gives an extra practice on top of what you've already done. A paper on psychological imagery in sport has been published in 2017 and basically said it is a powerful psychological technique. Your imagination. There are no limits to your imagination. The broader your imagination, the more possible outcomes. That can lead to uncertainty and doubt, and we start to do a thing called catastrophizing. Our brain's natural function is to keep us alive and keep us safe. So we're always looking for the negative, we're always looking for the threats, even though they may not happen. To manage our anxiety, we have to come out of outcome focus. We have to come out of thinking too far ahead into the future and all the negative things. We can use a grounding technique. You reconnect with your environment and we use all 5 senses. And I remember it by 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look around for 5 things you can see. Try and see a team that you're familiar with. Try and find one of your coaches, one of your teammates. Touch 4 things. You can touch your chair bow, touch your chair bag, touch the person next to you, if you know who they are. If not, you've either made a new friend or you're going to get arrested. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell, probably fake tan and hairspray. And 1 thing you can taste, again, probably hairspray. Now, all 5 senses are back in here and now. Then we have to take care of the physical symptoms. Usually we've released adrenaline because we're anxious, our heart rate speeds up, our breathing becomes fast and shallow, and we start to deoxygenate our blood. Controlled breathing, we can use a rhythmic technique, which is a calming technique, restricts the amount of oxygen and restricts the heart rate and activates what we call our parasympathetic nervous system to bring us back to normal. Choreography is done on a count of 8, so do your breathing on the same. Breathe in for a count of 8, breathe out for a count of 8. It might not be possible to do it straight away when you're anxious. You might get to 4 or 5, 6 if you're lucky, but that's the focus. The target is to get to breathing in for a count of 8 and out for a count of 8. Now another one that I've used with a lot of teams that's got a lot of positive feedback is square breathing. That restricts oxygen and engages the process focus region of the brain. And it's quite simple. We breathe in through our nose for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. Breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds. And hold your breath for 4 seconds. And repeat. That will slow your heart rate down and control your breathing. Probably better than any other technique. Now, one thing I have used before with someone who was pretty much going into meltdown is the dive response, also known as a diving reflex. Set physiological responses to immersion that basically overrides your natural reflexes. We optimise respiration by distributing oxygen stores to the heart and the brain. Now, your brain is 2% of your overall body weight, but it uses up 20% of the oxygen that you breathe in, so it's quite oxygen dependent. The more oxygen we get to our brain, the less it's going to panic. Now, the diving reflex is triggered specifically by chilling and wetting the nostrils and face while holding your breath. If you can, not always practical, especially with a full face of makeup, but fill a sink with water, hold your breath and submerge your face in it. If you can't get to a sink, coaches, if you can carry a Ziploc bag and then just fill it with cold water, that applied to the face works too. This causes your heart rate to slow down because you redirect blood to the vital organs to conserve oxygen. What also happens is your spleen contracts. That increases red blood cell count. Now, your red blood cells carry oxygen, and that increases the oxygen capacity of your blood. In response to the facial contact with cold water, your heart rate can slow 10 to 25%, which is pretty good if you're hyperventilating. Drive reversal theory. The physical symptoms of anxiety are exactly the same as the physical symptoms of excitement. When we're anxious and someone tells us to calm down, our brain does a quick check of our physical symptoms to see if it's possible to calm down. Now, with our heart beating so quick, our breathing fast and shallow, we're trembling because we've released glycogen, which turns to glucose in the blood, our brain rejects the idea of calming down. The emotional triggers to anxiety and excitement are different. The physical symptoms are the same. If you tell your brain you're excited when you're actually anxious, your brain will do that quick physical check, recognise all the symptoms of excitement and register it as that. Say out loud, I'm excited. It's a good one just before you step onto the mat. We need the adrenaline, we just don't need that emotional context. Adrenaline is good for performing. Hold it until just before you take to the mat. Goal setting is quite important for any athlete in any sport. Now, we believe a lot more of what we see than what we hear. So buy a notebook, write down little quotes, anything that inspires you. Write down positive feedback you've got from one of your coaches or from one of your teammates. Print out photos from your social media of winning trophies or memories of really good performances. Write down anything you did well and stick it in that book. Before competitions, read the book. Visually, we register that better. Sometimes we have so many things going around in our head in a competition, we can't access these memories. But if it's there in black and white in front of you, it's easier to get hold of. A little thing that we do with a lot of teams, on the final practice before a competition, sit in a circle. One member of the team holds an object in the hand and sits quietly and doesn't speak. The person to the left then gives them a positive comment, and it can be anything as long as it's positive. It can be you're a good friend, you train hard, you're a really good flyer, you're a really solid base, love your tumbles, your eyebrows are perfectly symmetrical, anything as long as it's positive. Then the next person, then the next person, until it gets back to them. They then pass the object to the person to the left and it goes round again. Imagine how you feel when your whole team have made a really positive comment about how they see you as part of that team. With the current situation, a lot of people are going to go through this model of loss and grief. Firstly, we go through shock and denial. That's to protect our emotional state. We don't want to be upset, so we kind of deny things a little bit. Once that bit's passed, we move on to anger. Anger between the event happening and us being able to process it. It can be internal anger, it can be external anger, but anger is an energy, and energy can be converted into lots of different types of energy. So go for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym, do some conditioning, go through your routine, mark it in your living room or your kitchen, wherever's comfortable. We then go to bargaining, where we try and take control of the situation, which is quite difficult. We start to wonder, maybe if I'd have done this, maybe if this would have happened instead. Once we go through that stage, we start to show signs of depression. We don't become clinically depressed, but it's called the depression stage, because we start to realise that all the other things, the shock, denial, anger and bargaining, haven't changed. That is when we get to acceptance. Acceptance is where we understand the situation, realise there's nothing we can do, and we move on. Tyson Fury, after beating Deontay Wilder, said he wanted to show the world that it can be done. Anything is possible with the right mindset. If you believe in yourself, and you sacrifice, and you dedicate, with the right help, you can come back. So, attitude, belief and commitment. Dedication, determination and discipline. They're the key things to remember. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, no matter where you are in the world, always happy to help. Contact us on one of our social media platforms and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care, be good, wash your hands. Bye bye.